Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, and when you want to take conversations with your fans to the next level, Q&A and polls are the best way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions, and best of all, it's totally free. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started today.
Big Ten, Big Ten, Big Ten, football talk. Big Ten, Big Ten, Big Ten, football talk. Big Ten, Big Ten, Big Ten, football talk. Big Ten, Big Ten, Big Ten, football talk.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim. We are talking the Duke's Mayo Bowl. We're going to talk a little bit about the naming of this and the reward of this in this podcast. If you like these bowl breakdowns, or if you like anything about the Big Ten in general, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe. I'm going to be doing all the breakdowns of the Big Ten bowl games. We're also going to talk a little bit about maybe the future of the Big Ten and the trajectory of certain programs in the Big Ten, especially as National Signing Day comes. So make sure to stay locked in here at the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. Leave a review. Please leave reviews. Please give feedback. The more we get, the more we can get our name out there. So please do that. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and send me an email, big10footballtalk@gmail.com. Maryland taking on NC State in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, where both coaches, Dave Doran and Mike Locksley, have agreed to a mayonnaise bath if they win the game. I would opt out of this game as a coach if that were the conditions. I'm sorry. This is when you know that bowl season has jumped the shark. I mean, you had Jimmy Kimmel, right? And then you have the Fenway Bowl. The Fenway Bowl is not bad, actually. Pinstripe Bowl, it's a nice sentiment. You know, play a football game in a historic stadium, or in Yankee Stadium's case, just a billion-dollar stadium or a multi-million-dollar stadium. Nice. Like, it's a neat thing, right? Why is this a thing? Like, why is this a bowl game? And listen, it's not like NC State is ranked, and this is a bowl game. I just don't understand. I don't know how anyone gets up for a game called the Mayo Bowl, right? Like the Mayo Bowl, the Relish Bowl, the Ranch Bowl. I mean, we have the Cheez-It Bowl, right? I mean, that's not a condiment, that's just snack. But really, like Mayo, and then we're gonna have the winning coach. I feel like it should be the losing coach that gets the Mayo bath. I just don't understand it. I considered for a minute just doing commentary on the absurdity that this is called the Mayo Bowl. But I try to give at least some analysis. I know sometimes it's not the greatest analysis, but I do try to give some analysis. Here's my analysis. If you eat the amount of mayo that they feed you, or that they pour on you for a mayo bath, it'll kill you. That's my analysis of this game. In all seriousness, Maryland 7-5, I think had maybe a bit of a disappointing season based on some of the expectations. I think a lot of people thought that they would knock off one of the big three in Penn State and Michigan and Ohio State. And instead, they really ended poorly. After keeping it close with Michigan, they lost to Wisconsin, which Wisconsin, not very good, although it's hard to play at Madison. They lost at Penn State 30-0, and then they kept it close with Ohio State in the last game, second to last game of the season. But in a lot of ways, it feels like this season really could have been special, at least for Maryland. They were within a touchdown of Michigan. They lost by 2 to Purdue at home, and this could have been a 9-3 season, maybe even a 10-2 season, and instead, it's a 7-5 season. Which, granted, if you go back to the first couple of years of Maryland being in the Big Ten, you will take 7-5 over 1-11 and 2-10 and being the laughingstock of the Big Ten. They're not the laughingstock of the Big Ten, but you went 7-5 with losses to, honestly, 2 teams that you should have beat, with Purdue and Wisconsin. And, I get the game was at Wisconsin, but particularly that game, that was winnable. Now, there's a lot of context. There were a lot of injuries. Taulia was hurt for a good chunk of the season. He was battling injury a good chunk of the season. Receivers in and out of the lineup. Demas was he got healthier as the season went on, but he was never back to what he was, I don't think. And so that was a big deal. But really, I think a season that was okay, but not great. What's interesting is that they're facing a team that, quite honestly, I think had similar expectations. So, you look at NC State, they're ranked, I believe, 23rd in the college football playoff rankings. But, they also did not necessarily finish well, right? They were 8-4, started 4-0, lost by 10 to Clemson, at Clemson. That's always a tough place to play. Then they lost to Syracuse, who at the time was hot. But then you lose to Boston College, who's just hot garbage. And then you lose to Louisville, who, Louisville was starting to put some things together. And then you lose and then you win in double overtime against a North Carolina team that, quite frankly, was just they got gassed at the end of the season. Now NC State also had injury issues. Devin Leary out for the year after the Florida State game. And so he was out, and then you had a bunch of other things going on. They ended up getting to their 4th string quarterback, and he has not been great. NC State's quarterback has not been their 4th stringer is not great, which, quite honestly, Ben Finley, you don't expect your 4th string quarterback to be very good because he's a 4th string quarterback. And so Dave Dornan, he knows how to coach offense. Devin Leary is a decent QB. But there's still quite a bit of uncertainty whether Morris, their backup quarterback, will be healthy in this game. And so it's very possible that Ben Finley plays, and Finley looked okay. He looked decent against UNC, but he did not do well against Boston College. So there's a lot of uncertainty with NC State. And I think with both these teams, there are higher expectations than you want. So there's a real question of motivation for both teams. And not just because it's called the Mayo Bowl. I think NC State was a dark horse ACC contender. Maryland, I don't think anyone expected them to make the Big Ten championship game. But I think I think people thought 9-10 wins was really achievable for them. And so there is, I think motivation is a question going into this game. I think which version of these teams show up, particularly Maryland, because Maryland, when they play their A game like they did against Ohio State, they can compete against really good teams. But then they can lay some stinkers. And there's a potential for this, right? Dante Demas opting out. Jacob Copeland opting out. Raheem Jarrett opting out. CJ Dipra is in the transfer portal. Those are 4 of their top 6 or 7 options as receivers. That is really significant, right? That I mean, Jarrett, all three of those wide receivers are probably going to be draft picks. And then one of their top corners, Deonte Banks, also out. So there's a lot of people out in this game for Maryland, and it makes you wonder, okay, are they gonna be okay? However, you look at NC State, they're already on their fourth string quarterback. They lose a pretty good receiver in Devin Carter to the transfer portal. Their starting center, Gibson's going to miss this game with injury, as will a defensive end, Jackson, who was sidelined with a knee injury. And there's rumors of more opt-outs coming. So it's really interesting. And then also, Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator of NC State, is leaving to go to Coastal Carolina to be a head coach. So there's some coaching uncertainty with NC State. So what's going to happen in this game? Who's going to be motivated? Who's going to be ready to go? Who matches up well? I think this could go, honestly could go either way. In fact, the Vegas line, it's -1 currently in favor of Maryland, which, by the way, this game is taking place Friday, December 30th, 12 p.m., 11 a.m. Eastern. By the way, just a side note, the Pinstripe Bowl, I said started at 1. It starts at 2 o'clock. I gave you the central time. So just, if you're listening to this and you listen to the other breakdown, Pinstripe Bowl, 2 o'clock, not 1 o'clock. But the Mayo Bowl, Friday, December 30th, 12 p.m., Maryland is a 1-point favorite as of this recording. The reality is, I'm not sure how much I trust NC State if they're playing a fourth-string quarterback. And as much as I don't trust Mike Locksley, and if you've listened to this pod at all, you know I think Mike Locksley is a great recruiter and an awful X's and O's guy. Like, he's not a good in-game coach, but he can recruit talent. And as much as I think Demas, Copeland, and Jarrett leaving is not good, it's not like the cupboard is all the way bare at those positions, or at that position, at the wide receiver position. Like, now they're thin, but they do have Jashawn Jones, who is actually their leading receiver this year. And then at tight end, they have Corey Dykes, who is the more productive tight end out of the two tight ends. So they have weapons. They get Hemby. They still have Hemby, who was, I think, a really underrated running back. I think if Maryland is healthy, and more importantly, if Taulia Tagovialoa is healthy, I think this actually bodes very well for the Terrapins. I think while Maryland has more of the star power that's out, I think NC State has more of the depth that's out. And I think if they are unable to move the ball well with, a fourth-string quarterback. Now, it could be MJ Morris. He could be in, but he has been hurt. So even if it's a hurt quarterback, I think it could be tough sledding for NC State's offense without their offensive coordinator, without a number of these guys who are either injured or going to the transfer portal. So I like Maryland in this game. I think you have a healthy quarterback, you have a healthy running back, you have a good wide receiver in Jashawn Jones, you have a good tight end. And I think they're even though Deonte Banks is opting out, I do think they have an underrated secondary. So I like Maryland in this football game. I think they win. I think it actually might be a bit more lopsided than people expect, with NC State, being the ranked team. But I like Maryland. I'll say 28-17, which isn't lopsided per se, but it's a double-digit win. I think it's going to be really tough for NC State to move the ball, especially because of their personnel. granted, I think Maryland's defense, the numbers don't necessarily bear out that they're great. They've allowed 219 yards a game through the air, but again, I look at NC State's offense. They have not been a great offense this year. Pass for 2.5 yards a game, but they don't run the ball well. I think Maryland makes NC State one-dimensional, and I think that allows Maryland to get some stuff going. I think they get a pretty big lead early, like maybe it's 14-0 or 21-7 in the third quarter, and then NC State maybe gets a field goal, and Maryland extends it to 28-10. NC State comes within 11 points at the end. But I like Maryland in this game. I think they have a good shot to win it. And I think 8-5 ending with a win over a ranked team, that'd be really good. I think if Maryland loses, if Maryland loses this game, it's not a big loss. NC State's ranked. And so I think that number, even though Maryland's the slight favorite in this game, I do think it's not going to be a momentum killer if Maryland loses this game. And I'm pretty sure that the Mayo Bowl is in North Carolina. So it's a de facto away game for Maryland. So all that being said, I like Maryland in this game. I think they're going to win. But let me know your thoughts. Leave a review. Shoot me an email. This has been the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. We'll be back on Friday with another bowl pick. Until then, take care and God bless.